Room 442 is brought to you by North Star Bets. That's a win.
And it's another draw for TFC last night as they faced the Chicago Fire here at BMO Field. I'm Sara Poraria. This is Mikey Singh. Mikey, another draw. I feel like it's just, I'm saying this over and over again this season, and especially after what was such a powerful win over the weekend, after, you know, what a crazy week it was for TFC, and then a 0-0 draw. What do we have to say?
I think Richie Larea said it best last night. He said that his personal feeling was that he was pissed. Pissed that they had a game where they had more chances than the opposition, a game that they definitely could have won, but they didn't. And it was an opportunity for them, knowing what came the last week, to really pick up a big victory, and they didn't. So I think, honestly, the feeling is, while they did get a point, they're not happy about it, they're not satisfied about it, and it's been a recurring narrative, as you mentioned, throughout the course of the season. Okay, a lot of draws, sure, draws happen, but in a lot of those draws, Toronto FC had the opportunity and were able to, I think, pick up more points during that span. You know, that's something Bob Bradley actually touched on as well. I asked him today, and he said, yeah, you know, they've left a lot of points on the table, but all you can really do now is just try and build off some of the positives that occurred during this past game and carry that forward into their next couple of games. So they're hoping that, you know, while, yes, points left on the table, it could be potentially a step in the right direction. I think that's the way you have to approach it.
Before we get into the positives, I just want to bring up the fact that, okay, maybe Richie may have said last night, yeah, I'm pissed, and I think that's the right mentality, but is there this same narrative going on with TFC where it's another draw and we're happy to pick up a point and it's better than, you know, a loss? This kind of mentality where it's like, all right, fine, we'll take what we can get. I feel like the fight is out of a lot of those players, staff, whoever it may be.
It's challenging. It is challenging because you're talking about some of the same narratives over and over and over, and like you're coming out and you're saying the same thing over and over and over. So honestly, that's almost why what Federico said in the article that was written, that little shock, that little jolt to, again, that just almost complacency, maybe it's not the right word, but that same like level-headed approach, like maybe that little jolt does something to the side, and we did see a bit of a response, and we have seen them start to play better. And another thing we have to mention is, yeah, they've gone through this injury crisis, and now they're starting to get bodies back in the mix. So from a positive standpoint, there is hope that they can actually build on this versus the last couple of weeks they were kind of just surviving. So hopefully they can get back to playing, you know, more football. And I think, again, the last two games, if you look at that, the chances that they created were a lot better than I think the entire season. So yeah, you know, it is a bit of a positive.
Another positive is Lorenzo Insigne really kind of coming back into form, but also in a time when they need him the most.
Yeah, Lorenzo Insigne, skill aside, let's put that aside for a second. It's his effort, his body language. It's something that he can control. I think Lorenzo Insigne has shown over these past two matches since all the turmoil happened that he's leading by example, and that's something that both Bob Bradley pointed out, Richie Larea pointed out, and Kobe Franklin have pointed out, that they've seen a Lorenzo Insigne that's more engaged. Bob Bradley's saying they track all the physical sides of the game, and Lorenzo Insigne is right up there. And he said it's also really important for Lorenzo and all of the leaders on the club to really step up and lead by example. And Kobe Franklin's echoing those same things, playing on the wing alongside Lorenzo. He says you can see a Lorenzo that's, you know, at times right beside him. He's checking his shoulder, and all of a sudden he sees Lorenzo Insigne beside him, supporting him on the defensive side of the game, which we haven't seen much from Lorenzo Insigne at all. So that stuff, you love to see the buy-in from Lorenzo, because I think it's buy-in that we haven't really seen out of him so far in his TFC career. So the fact now that they're getting that from their big player, the hope is that this continues, and they don't just get that these two matches, they get that the rest of the season.
Yeah, hopefully. And now looking ahead to Saturday, TFC are on the road to the Minnesota United, and Bob Bradley doesn't have the best away record here. How do these guys come out of that win to then a draw at home, and now going away, knowing the way they've been playing on the road, and kind of pick themselves up here.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing, right? You look at TFC's road record over the past 2 years since Bob Bradley's taken over. They've earned just 2 wins in 24 matches, and none so far this season. That being said, Bob Bradley sees the team's mentality as being a lot better on the road this season. If you look at some of the games, I think they have 3 or 4 draws this season on the road. And a lot of those games, you could actually make the argument that TFC were the better team. And again, as we talked about earlier in this chat, points were left on the table. So, defensively, they've been really strong on the road. They're not conceding too many goals, which is always a good start. But then they have to translate what they've done these past 2 matches, which is create more chances and translate that onto the road. And again, Minnesota, I wouldn't say it's the most difficult environment on the road ever, but it's still a road environment. It's going to be a tough trip to make for TFC. I will mention, though, Minnesota, they have 1 win at home this season in 6 games. So, yeah, we're talking about points being valuable for this team. They may have to look at this one as being even more valuable just because potentially there's points in the balance here. Minnesota's a team that doesn't concede a lot. They don't score a lot, however, and that works right into TFC's kind of recipe there where they don't concede a lot either. So I'm expecting a low-scoring game in this one. That being said, like I said, if they can get a goal, it's there for the taking.
Yeah, and they're going to need to try and take advantage of this game because after that, TFC are back into another very difficult schedule: Cincinnati, New England, and then, of course, Mahit, the Gold Cup coming up, which means several of these TFC players will not be available.
Yeah, that's exactly why points are more valuable. Before those games, they also have Nashville at home, and Nashville's the second best team in the East right now. They're unbeaten in their last 6 matches, 5 wins in their last 6, so that's a tough test. And then you have to, as you mentioned, travel to the Eastern Conference leaders in Cincinnati, a team that's unbeaten, a perfect 8-0-0 at home this season. You got to go and find a result. And then after that, you got to go to the turf at Gillette Stadium. New England's in 4th right now, and always a difficult place to play, especially for a TFC team that, you could say is a little bit older too. That'll be a challenge as well. So those next 3 games, that's why makes Saturday's game just that much more important than you said the Gold Cup. We'll deal with that when it gets there, but it does look like TFC could be missing a couple of key pieces, and for a team whose depth isn't the greatest, again, that's why I say that those points are so valuable right now.
All right, well, let's see what Bob Bradley and the Reds can do. TFC take on Minnesota United Saturday.
Room 442 is brought to you by North Star Bets. That's a win.